As soon as they got into government, Labour started saying there was a crisis in the prisons and they were in danger of being overcrowded. The Conservative government had previously released 10,083 prisoners between October 2023 and the general election. At first, prisoners were released 18 days early. This was expanded to 35 days, then 70 days in 2024. Labour's Shadow Justice Minister, Shabana Mahmood, condemned this, remarking it would cause shockwaves and deep concern across our country. The Labour manifesto states, prisoners are getting released early, and it doesn't mean that in a good way. Labour also released prisoners 18 days early between 2007 and 2010, those released totalling 80,000. There was also a plan drawn up by the Tories to release non-violent offenders after 40% of their sentence had been served. No final decision was made on this, and the election interrupted matters. Seeing the situation in the prisons, Labour decided to go forward with the plan. It wasn't in the manifesto, of course, but who cares? Thousands of those miscreants have now been let out of jail, while their friends literally popped champagne corks. One of them, a drug dealer, said he was now a lifelong Labour voter. Others have been picked up in luxury cars and posed for photographs as if they are lottery winners. In a way, they are. Stormtroopers maintain Labour had to do this because of the mess the Tories left. Let's be under no illusions, the prisons are in a state. They are not invested in properly, with not enough staff trained up, and contracts given to rather unaccountable private companies. Both parties are to blame for all this, in particular the last one in power. However, it does seem there is some ideology behind Labour's move. Starmer's much celebrated choice for Prisons Minister, Lord James Timpson, said before the election that 2/3 of prisoners should not be incarcerated and should have community sentences. We can't afford as a country to build 4 to 6 billion worth of prisons to house more people, he pontificated. It just doesn't make sense. The cobbler and key-cutting magnate, who has employed ex-offenders in his business as part of a rehabilitation program, does not believe in large-scale imprisonment as a punishment or deterrent. The PM, and many within Labour, must agree to some extent, otherwise he would not be the minister. It is convenient, then, that the situation has arisen where there is an excuse to let out prisoners. There is an alternative to doing this, namely fast-tracking prison improvements and new builds, and using temporary facilities in the meantime. You could either construct temporary structures from scratch, like the Nightingale Hospital during COVID, or adapt existing buildings, such as disused NHS or military sites. Anne Widdecombe suggested this during the Reform Conference, recalling that when she was in charge of prisons under John Major, a former holiday camp was considered.
Hello, campers. Rise and shine.
Yes, making temporary holding facilities would be highly expensive, but we are talking about the security of the British public. Law and order is a necessity, and any government serious about the problem would spend the money, shelving other spending priorities to do so. Starmer dismisses such notions, flippantly saying, "I hear the prisons are overcrowded on Thursday at 10 o'clock, but somehow I've magicked up a new prison on Friday morning. That isn't going to happen." Letting these convicts out is a choice, to save cash and to satisfy progressive inclinations. The concept of security is not in the driving seat. Indeed, you don't get to play the role of the responsible grown-ups by copying the irresponsible policies of your predecessor. We were promised a different approach, one of investment, public service and wisdom. This isn't it. Defenders of Labour will say these are only non-violent and non-sexual criminals. Well then, why was Labour so concerned when the Tories were releasing the same type of convict? And non-violent or not, that doesn't mean some of those released will not commit violence. MOs change, especially after prison. It seems inevitable that at least a few incidents of physical harm will befall the public as a result of this move. Indeed, it emerged on September the 26th that 37 prisoners were released by mistake. They were all men who had committed offences related to domestic violence. One of the prisoners was Amari Ward, who had breached a restraining order. God forbid it happens, but it would only take one incident for the brown stuff to hit the fan and an electoral backlash to rock Starmer.